Hi everybody and welcome to Mike's Hidden Histories. I'm here in Strayed in County Mayo in Ireland, on the west coast of Ireland, to tell you about this man, Michael Davitt. And he is hugely significant in Irish history because he was the man who tackled landlordism in Ireland and ensured that the tenant farmers of the 19th century would become the owners of their land. And his story is extremely interesting. He brought about a revolution in Irish society. Now, behind me here, there's a museum in Strayed in County Mayo, a very good museum as well, and Michael Davitt is buried behind that museum, which is an old church. But tell you the story about this man. He was born here in March 1846 at the height of the famine to Martin and Catherine, his parents, Martin and Catherine Davitt. 4.5 years later, in 1850, the family are evicted from their small cottage and it's set on fire and it's burnt because they couldn't afford the rent. In the first instance, they went to the local workhouse, but didn't stay there. So they left and they got to Dublin, got themselves to Dublin, over to Liverpool. And so the entire family walked the 72 kilometres to the small cotton town of Haslington, and there they stayed in an Irish community. Now, in that community, there was a festering hatred of landlordism in Ireland, and you can understand why. And and this is where Michael spent his formative years in his youth. Now, he went to school until he was age 9, and then in 1855 he went into a cotton mill and worked there for as a child labourer, in fact, on the machines. In 1857, he catches his right arm in a machine. It's mangled, and in fact, he has it amputated. Obviously, after losing his arm, he couldn't work in the factory anymore. So, but he had an opportunity to go to a local Wesleyan college where he was sponsored by a man called John Dean. And this gave him a good education. In 1865, in 1860, excuse me, he's now working in a post office, and he's there until 1865. During that time, he goes to the Mechanics Institute at night time and learns about Irish history. This convinced him about, based on his own experience and what he had read, he's now convinced that the only solution to the land problem in Ireland was to ensure that the tenants, the people who work the land, own the land. Now, in 1865, he joined the Irish Republican Brotherhood, committed to separation of Ireland, a separate Irish nation from England. And by 1867, he's working full time with them in the north of England and Scotland. But he's also smuggling guns under the cover of being a travelling salesman. By 1867 as well, we find he's involved in a raid on Chester Castle, which fails, in fact, to secure the arms within the castle. He's not found. He was looking to escape undetected at that. But by 1870, his luck rang out. He's in Paddington Station. He has 152 or 153 pounds on him, waiting for a shipment of pistols to come in, and he's arrested. He is taken to court. He's found guilty, and he's sentenced to 15 years in Dartmouth prison. So that's 1870. 1877, he gets a letter of release. He's released on condition. Under certain conditions, after 7.5 years in prison. It does have a bad effect on his health. He spent a lot of time in solitary confinement. So in December 1877, he's released, and he comes back then to Ireland to a hero's welcome, in fact, himself and a few others in 1878, in January 1878. He doesn't spend that long here because now he's convinced about his policy that the land of Ireland must belong to the people of Ireland. So he heads to America because he wants to get support from Fine Gael, from the IRB there, for his views, and he wants to raise money as well. So he tours America. He meets the American Irish community there for assistance. He comes back in 1879 and he comes to Mayo, and he finds that there's the middle of a minor famine because it was a very wet summer, and crops have failed. Okay, so he sees the huge poverty that has ensued in the area in which he was reared, in fact. So now he is instrumental with others in calling for a huge big meeting in Irish Town in County Mayo, which up to 10,000 people attended, and they were looking for uh, uh, fair rent, and they were looking for, to end evictions. And this was the first big meeting. Others were to follow. But it probably was the start of what they called the land war. It started maybe a little bit later, but this was an iconic moment in the life of Michael Davitt. He didn't participate in this because of his conditional release from prison. So in 1879, Michael Davitt was instrumental in forming the Land League of Mayo. And this evolved then into the National Land League, which was founded in October 1879. Now, others involved with him was Charles Stewart Parnell, who was the leader of the Irish Party in Westminster. He was a very powerful politician of his day, and we'll hear more about him later in this story. The objectives of the Land League was known as the three Fs: fair rent, free sale, and fixity of tenure. That rent would be set at a level that was considered fair and equitable, and that the tenants would not be evicted at the whim of a landlord. Now, again, the policy of the Land League was the land of Ireland for the people of Ireland. Now, when some of the leaders are arrested in 1881, they issue a no rent manifesto, a manifesto urging the tenant farmers right across Ireland not to pay rent, to withhold rent until there was reasonable response from government about the landlords and about the increasing level of evictions. Now, Michael Davitt finds himself imprisoned as well at this time for an insightful speech in breach of the conditions of his release from prison. This is the first of a number of occasions when he does end up in prison, in fact. Now, the Land League was having a big influence on British government policy. In 1870, the Land Act did try to give fixity of tenure, and then we had the Land Law Act of 1881. So the 1881 Land Act did try to address the idea of fair rent, free sale, and fixity of tenure, but actually things had moved on now. That wasn't good enough anymore, because now the tenants actually aspired to owning their own land, and this is what Michael Davitt was encouraging as well. Things began to fall apart a little bit by 1890, when Charles Stewart Parnell, the leader of the Irish Party, is named as a co-defendant in a divorce case taken by Captain O'Shea, and he was having a long-term affair with the captain's wife, Kitty O'Shea. Now, he refused to resign. This in Victorian Ireland was a huge scandal. He refused to resign, and because of this, there was a split in the Irish Party. There was the Parnellites and the anti-Parnellites. And Michael Davitt was vehemently against Parnell because of this. So, moving on to 1895, at long last, he is elected. Michael Davitt is elected to the Member of Parliament for South Mayo. He doesn't stay there that long. By 1896, he leaves in protest at the treatment of the Boers during the Boer War. After a visit to his dentist to have a tooth extracted in 1906, he dies from sepsis from blood poisoning, which was unfortunate. He was only aged 60 at that stage. His wish was to be brought back to Strade in County Mayo, and he's buried here at the back of this former church. In 1870, 97% of farmers did not own their land. They were tenant farmers. By 1929, 97.4% of farmers owned their land. So there was a significant revolution at that time, and much of it attributable to Michael Davitt. That's all from Mike's Hidden History. More next time.